Welcome to the Heartful Parent Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Keating. In this podcast, we talk about it all, our parenting, our partnering, and our professional lives, because they are all a part of us, and we were never meant to do this alone. Hey, podcast listeners. We are back with another episode of the Heartful Parent Podcast. And I am particularly excited to bring you this episode with my colleague, Ed Gerety, who is also a podcast host himself and has just written a phenomenal book called Shine Your Light, Navigate Your Way to a Life You Love. But more than that, or in addition to that, Ed is an inspirational keynote speaker, author, and podcast host known for his unique ability to connect with the hearts and minds of his audience. With a career spanning over 3 decades, he has captivated audiences across North America. Ed's empowering message of gratitude, respect, kindness, and resilience have been shared with over 3 million people. And in 2005, Ed received his Certified Speaking Professional designation, which is an honor held by less than 10% of speakers who belong to the International Federation of Professional Speakers. He lives in New Hampshire on the seacoast with his wife and their 2 teenagers, ages 16 and 18. He'll talk about them a little bit. And I really loved this conversation with Ed. But it's a fun conversation. It is a conversation where we dive into gratitude and kindness and self-confidence and goal setting and curiosity and all these things that we really want our kids to have and to run with, that sometimes we don't give them the space for, or we're not talking about it in the right way. And Ed sort of has the magic sauce, if you will, for how to really bring more of all of those things into our lives and the lives of our teens. If you have kids that are younger than teens, I would encourage you to listen to this conversation anyway, because although Ed's work really focuses on that middle school and high school set, and that's kind of the focus of our conversation, these are conversations that I think apply broadly and are things that we all need to know no matter what age of kiddo we are parenting. So if you've got a toddler or an adult child, I think this one will be useful for you as well. So without further ado, Ed Gerety. Ed Gerety, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here, especially since we did this in reverse order a while back. It's great to have you on the Heartful Parent Podcast.
Thanks, Christy. It's great to be here.
So I want to jump right in. Obviously the listeners have heard a little bit about you and who you are, but I would this is sort of a personal question for me too, because I've got this book brewing in the back of my head. So what inspired you to write your latest book, which is Shine Your Light? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. So Shine Your Light, Navigating Your Way to a Life You Love is a book that really is a culmination of my 3 decades of work that I've been doing with middle school students and high school students and college students across North America. And so I've taken all the stories and all the anecdotes and the lessons and the strategies that I share with students and with parents, and helping them navigate a way to the life that they love. And so I talk about gratitude and attitude and respect and responsibility and being kind. So it really is, in a sense, kind of my life work up to this point, kind of like Ed on a plate, as my wife likes to say.
Ed on a plate. I love that. 3 decades of work. First of all, let's just start with the kudos to you, because as we were talking before we hit record, I have a high schooler who I adore. She's amazing. Sometimes she lets me, talk to her about stuff. And sometimes she's like, yeah, Mom, I got this. So to be doing 3 decades of work with middle schoolers and high schoolers, that deserves kudos in and of itself.
Thanks, Christy.
And then to distill it out all down into a book that is for parents and for these kids to kind of use is really incredible. So you mentioned that there's a bunch of messages that you talk about. And I know, having spoken with you before, that gratitude and, as you said, attitude, those are really big concepts for you. And I know they're focused on in the book. we're recording this right as are in the holiday season. We've come off of Thanksgiving. Gratitude has been at the forefront of many people's minds, but there's more to it than the once a year kind of celebration. So talk to me a little bit about the messaging that you share with kids and their parents and how you address that in the book.
Sure. And what's also great about the book too is that, Christy, is that everything I share in the book isn't just stuff that I've shared with students at middle schools and high schools and colleges. I've used these tools and strategies and techniques, my wife and I, with our two teenagers. We have a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old right now. And so all these areas are not just when I'm going into a school, but we're using them in our house.
Yeah.
And gratitude is such a big piece of what I talk about. And also it's a big piece of what makes our family dynamic work in our home. And so how do we practice gratitude? And I think in a lot of ways, kids today are desensitized to the word gratitude because they see it everywhere. If you want to shut a kid off, you can say, be grateful. And they're like, that's right next to be respectful or don't bully. They hear the message constantly. So as parents, I don't know if we necessarily use the word gratitude as we really lead by example. And we actually demonstrate showing our teenagers when somebody does a nice job that we say, hey, thank you. It's even the simple of just modeling, please, thank you, you're welcome. And hey, look how great you did at that. You're modeling that principle of gratitude that's so essential, I believe, to kids really being the best version of themselves.
I think it's a really interesting point that they're kind of desensitized to it. And we have a young person living in our home who's not one of my children. She's our childcare provider. She's an au pair. And we've really struggled with helping her recognize and practice gratitude. And I think you're right that it has to be one of those things that is modeled and talked about, but not in a be grateful kind of a way. But, what are the things I'm grateful for? What are, and as you said, just a simple thank you sometimes goes a really long way.
I used to ask my daughter, I used to ask my son all the time, so what are you grateful for? What are you grateful for about today? In fact, I even would talk when I talk with parents and students, I'll talk about, every night before you go to bed, ask yourself, what are 3 things you're grateful for? That's great for adults, but sometimes that's more challenging for teens. Yeah. So we can ask maybe a different question, like, hey, what made you laugh today? That's when they talk about what made them laugh today. A lot of times those stories are really, there's a slice of gratitude in that story because it's wow. Because then you can say, wow, my friend made me laugh at lunch today. And then you could say, wow, isn't it great that you have a great group of friends you get to have lunch with? So without even saying, hey, isn't it great that you should be grateful that you have friends to sit with at lunch? You're shining a light on that just by having the conversation of, hey, what made you laugh today? Or, hey, if we have a game around the dinner table. When they were kids, we used to call it the gratitude game. We'd go around and say, what are you grateful for? Well, now we can't really do that because it's teenagers. But instead we could say, hey, what did you really like about today? What was really enjoyable about today? Or what was really fun about the dinner that we just had with our friends and our family? So you just have to be a little bit more creative about how you bring that about. But there is no question that gratitude, even not just kids, but adults, are desensitized to the word, I think, in some ways. To practice it is essential to us living a life that we love. And I think it's essential to being an effective parent is to teach that gratitude. And the way we teach it is leading by example.
Yeah. I really appreciate that because I think with our teenagers and even with our little ones, because my 6-year-old, the word gratitude is kind of a big word for her. And she's great at giving me hugs and saying, thank you, mommy. But I'm not sure that she always puts that together with this big concept of gratitude, right? So modeling it and talking about it in creative ways, I think is just so smart. And I mean, if we're being honest, parenting teens, especially, and young adults, there is a real element of creativity to it. And the language that we use or don't use matters.
Absolutely. And I know there might be some parents listening to this too saying, okay, well, great, but give me a how. Ed, you're talking about leading by example, but I'm not really grateful for a lot that's going on in my life right now. I got a lot of stuff going on. And I think it's important to remind ourselves that as we lead by example, that gratitude is not a challenge. Gratitude is a choice. Just like our attitude is a choice. So we make the choice to be grateful every day. And so then how can we bring more gratitude into our life? One strategy to bring more gratitude into your life is to really make it an intentional effort to really create a gratitude journal. taking the time, even just once a day, even every other day, to start off your morning and just reflecting and writing down some of the things that you're really thankful and that you appreciate in your life. It reframes the day. And if you do that in the morning, it sets you up to win the day. If you do it at night and you reflect on the things you were grateful for at night, then it reframes you to set you up for the next day.
Yeah.
Another strategy besides the gratitude journal is, and I've had parents share this with me, in that one parent shared with me how they have a gratitude jar. They have 4 kids, 2 middle schoolers and 2 high school students. And what they did one day is they sat around the table and they wrote down 10 things that they appreciate about each family member on 10 individual pieces of paper. Then they took all those 10 things and they put them all in, like what they appreciate about people in the family. And they put that all into a big jar in the kitchen. And it's like, they call it their family gratitude jar. You can call it anything you want. I know it's kind of counterintuitive because they just said gratitude we're desensitized to that word, but call it whatever you want. But that idea of then having kids say, hey, all right, you have a chat. Let's go into the gratitude jar and see let's see what we can find here. It's a great exercise and a great activity. It's almost going in for that treat. And it doesn't have to be an everyday thing. It could just be when you sense that maybe your child is having a down day or challenging day, and you can slip in a few extra little notes into that gratitude jar too, that they don't know about.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I mean, there's an element of like, it can improve our own mood when we recognize what we are grateful for. It's also really fabulous when we can hear why other people are grateful for us, right? It goes both ways, and kids love to hear what we appreciate about them or what we're grateful for them. I love that you said these things, because I actually keep a gratitude journal that I write in every night. And we recently, and I talked about this in another episode, earlier this year, I put up whiteboards outside of both of my children's doors, and I put one on the closet door that I share with my husband, and they're appreciation boards. And so I write down like gratitudes or appreciations for them on a regular basis. And this might be the modeling piece that you're talking about, because they first of all, they love it. And I didn't do it for, I don't know, a week or something. And my teenage daughter was like, Mom, I check it every day to see if you've written something. Like, she
that's awesome.
Really loves it. But then they've started coming into our closet and writing things on our board that they're grateful for us, which is really cool.
That's really cool. And just another fun exercise and activity to create that habit of doing that. I also heard one parent share with me how they have a bunch of magnets on their refrigerator, but all the magnets they have on there, those little magnet words, they all have words on it, but the words are different words. And so the kids have fun forming sentences, but the sentences are all about things they're grateful for and things they appreciate. It becomes funny. It becomes silly, but you choose the words you keep up in the fridge. You just take out the words you don't want the kids using. And I've heard that a couple of times from parents about it gives the kids a framework to practice that.
Love it. I love that. Now, I know gratitude is obviously a big theme in your work and in the book that you wrote, but it's not the only thing that's in there.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit. I know that self-confidence is another theme that you address in Shine Your Light. Talk to us a little bit about that piece.
Sure. And the one thing that I've realized that I'm in working with kids and also not just working with kids and teens, but also talking with parents, and one of their biggest struggles is we want our kids to have that self-esteem. We want them to be able to make positive, healthy choices, and we want them to believe in themselves. We want them to make positive choices, and we want them to have a positive attitude. And sometimes the word that gets left out a lot is, at the end of the day, we need to build more confidence in our kids. And sometimes I think that gets a negative word, because a lot of times, a lot of adults don't have a lot of confidence. And so we shield that and disguise it in a number of different ways, and kids do it the same way. So if our kid is lacking confidence, they say, well, maybe they're not being included, or maybe they need to they should be in a smaller class, or they should go and join a different team. And it has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with them building more of their confidence. So how do we help our teen build more confidence? It kind of goes, it kind of goes what you just said too a moment ago about kids love hearing what we appreciate about them. But we can't just say, hey, I appreciate that you're a very kind person. You have to go one step more, and you have to give them actually the detail of the why. Why do you appreciate about them? So that's one thing that I've realized, and especially talking with parents, and I've applied that as a parent. with our own children is that if I say, "Hey, Shannon, I really appreciated how you helped your friend, and here's how you did that. You really took the time to listen to her. Then you actually took the time to write her a note, and then not only that, then you got in the car and you drove the note over to her house. You highlight not just what she did, but how and why they did it." And I think that's so important because then they know why you're praising them and why you're encouraging them to keep doing that behavior. That's how we build confidence. Confidence isn't a one-time thing. It's like, hey, you did a really great job on that test. Look how hard you worked. And look how hard you worked because you studied, for 30 minutes every night for the last 5 nights for that test. And that showed your hard work, your perseverance. So it's not just the compliment, it's the compliment with the detail, with the why.
I remember hearing years ago when my oldest was just little that it's so typical for many of us as parents, and I don't want to make anybody feel bad if they've done this, but right when a child does a piece of art, and kindergarten art or preschool art, it's not typically great. And so we say things, "Oh, what a pretty picture," or I love what you did, love what you drew or whatever, but we don't use a lot of specificity. And so our kids start to tune us out because if we're just saying, "Oh, that's a pretty picture" every time, they're like, "Well, yeah, mom always says that," or "Dad always tells me that." But if we can get really specific and say things like, "I love the color that you used," or "Look how much red you have in that picture." It strikes me that it's kind of the same thing with, "I appreciate that you wrote the note and then you got in the car and you drove it over to her house." There's just a lot more meat to that, right?
There is. And I will also say, though, I've been one of those parents where I've just said, "Wow, that's an amazing picture," and then have moved on. And what I've also learned and realized, and it's not, it's always a work in progress. And that is that, it's complimenting our teens and encouraging them that they're doing a great job and reminding them that, hey, you're doing a great job and keep up the effort. But I think it's important to what you said is that if you just continue to say you did a great job when they didn't do a great job, then what I realized is that I think I'm being a positive parent by saying, "Hey, good effort. Hey, that was a great game. That was a great performance. You were wonderful in that." When we both know you really weren't that wonderful. And so we think we're actually helping our teen, but what our teen is, and the reason why I've learned this, or how I've learned this, is that I've talked to teens and say, "Well, why are you frustrated with your mom? Why are you frustrated with your dad?" "Well, my dad always just says I'm doing a great job and he never really listens." Yeah. So what happens is if you have a son or a daughter and they have let's say they have a dance recital, and they fall down during the dance recital, and they fall down not once, they fall down 3 times. And they come back and they're all upset, and you say, "It's okay. You know what? I think you were wonderful." Not only is your teen going to dismiss you on that, but then on a subtle level, and this is one thing that I discovered, and also talking with other parents too, and also other experts like you, Christy, is that you lose a sense of trust from your teen. Your teen all of a sudden says, "Well, mom and dad," and you kind of touched on that a moment ago, like, "Yeah, mom always says I do a great job. So when I'm really looking for some real approval or validity, I'm not going to actually go to you." Because I'm going to say, why would I go? Why would I go from mom and dad for what they the thoughts? Because they're just going to always just tell me I did a great job.
Right. It no longer feels meaningful to them or doesn't carry any weight to it.
That's right. And so it's such a fine line, because the last thing we want to do is crush our teen spirit. We think we're building up their confidence. And I think that's the mistake too. We realize we have to remember too, I think, and I've made this mistake, is that we think that we build our teens' confidence, or we build our child's confidence through their achievements and through their awards. And that's not where it comes from. It comes from their setbacks. It comes from the obstacles that they face. And so I think the hardest thing that I've realized as a parent is to allow your child to fail. And I think that's the hardest thing to do in the whole world. How do we allow them to fail if they have a big test the next night and they had all week to study for it? And they're like, well, now they're pulling an all-nighter and they need our help for the project. I'm not saying you say, "Well, it's your bed, so you have to sleep in it, so fail the test." You pick your shots of where you do that. And that's different for every parent. But you have to allow them to have their setbacks, because it's through the setbacks where they develop the growth mindset, the resiliency that we talk so much about that we want our kids to have, and that determination, that perseverance. But that only comes from their setbacks and the challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. If we're bailing them out constantly or stepping in and doing things for them that they really can and should be doing for themselves, Which,
Yeah.
I mean,
I-
I think there is no parent that is immune to this unless they just simply don't care at all, because watching your children struggle or watching them be upset or watching them be sad or frustrated like that, it's terrible. I mean,
yeah.
I hate it. I was watching my older daughter just this week. She forgot to tell us about an event that was happening at school. She needs some specific clothing for that event at school. And lo and behold, Amazon cannot get it here in time. And I don't have time to take her shopping for it because she's known about it for weeks, but that information was not conveyed. It is so hard to look at her and say, wow, I'm really sorry. And I know that's like not a test or something that in the long run feels like it's that important, but it does to her. And I said to my husband, this just last night, I said, I really hate this because I see her head droop and her demeanor and she's upset because she realizes that she screwed up and I'm not bailing her out. I so want to bail her out, and doing that,
Yes.
right, it would be a big inconvenience to my schedule. And what am I teaching her about letting us know perhaps a few weeks earlier about an event that she's got on the schedule, right?
Yeah, and that's the conversation to say, hey, I care about you. And that's where we can kind of teach the life lessons from that and do it in a very calm, not I told you so. And when you find the exact way to do that, let me know, because there is no one way to do it. I think that's why, your podcast is so important, Christy, because it's like, there is no one manual on how to be a parent. And there's just there's no one direct route as we navigate our way to living a life that we love. And that's what I talk about in my book too. In that, sometimes I think our biggest frustration as parents is we want our kids not only just to be confident. Another big worry for us is for them to be safe, but then we want them to know, all right, once they have their life figured out, then it'll be okay. And so I'm talking to freshmen in high school that are completely stressed out and overwhelmed because they're like, well, my parents they have me already figured out what I'm doing. They're already picking out my college and they're figuring out my career, and it's too much and it's too fast.
Yeah.
We have to give our teen the chance to explore and to teach them the lesson too, Christy, that, they don't have to have it all figured out and planned out. I think one of the big things we can share with our kids and our teens is that it's so easy when our teen says, what do you want to do? Or where do you want to go? Or what are your goals? And they say, I don't know. And we get this like hollow feeling in our stomach. What do you mean you don't know? Well, that means I'm a bad parent. So you have to figure it out. You don't have to figure it out right away. The average college student changes their major once. And I think it's a mistake to tell your teen or your kid, hey, that's okay if you don't have it figured out. Go follow your passion. They don't even know what passion is. Rather, I think we challenge our teen and we encourage them to be curious. That their great responsibility right now, whether it's middle school, high school, and even our child right now who's at first year in college, your job is to be curious. That means to be curious in the classroom, step outside your comfort zone, take positive risks, try new things, to really be curious and to know that it's not just about the goal, but you're teaching them life skills and what they're experiencing on the way towards the goal that really matters. So important.
Oh my God. Okay. So I love that concept of curiosity being what should drive them rather, because I hear lots of parents say that all the time. Follow your passion, follow your dreams or whatever. And again, and I feel like I keep telling my own stories here, but just last night, again, I was having this conversation with my teen and we were talking about this other gal that she knows who is like super driven and knows exactly what she wants to do. And this is a kid that I think will probably follow that course. And my daughter goes, I don't know what I want to do. And I said, honey, that's okay. Like, you're 14. You don't need to know. And I told her the story of how when I was in high school, I went to college with the idea that I was going to be this one thing. I walked out of college with a completely different degree, a completely different plan. And now, at age 45, I changed it all again. Right?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll give you two examples too, Christy. Our daughter came to my wife and I. She's a junior in high school, and she said, "Hey, mom and dad, I decided what I want to do for a summer job." And it's like, great. What are you gonna do for a summer job? Awesome. She's like, I want to be a lifeguard at the beach. So right away, red flags go up in my head because as a dad, and I know my wife is already red flags are going up. beach, lifeguard, all the responsibility. And so instead of me shutting it down, saying, absolutely not, there's no way you're going to be a lifeguard this summer. Do you realize how hard that is? And man, most of all, I'm not going to let my daughter get eaten by a shark, right? I could have done that right away. I could have gone that whole route. Instead, I was like, isn't that interesting? Really? Why do you want to be a lifeguard? And you know what her reasoning was? Well, Dad, you're always about you're really good about doing multitasking. I figure I go to the beach as a lifeguard. I get my workout in the morning, because you have to do a 5-mile swim in the morning. And then I'll be able to get a little work on my tan. And, if the beach is slow, I'll also be able to catch up with my friends. Cause I'm like, your friends? She's like, yeah, I'll just call my friends up and they can just come on and hang out with me while I'm at the beach as a lifeguard. I'm like, really? You can do that? She goes, oh, sure, you can do that. I'm like, well, why don't you go and explore it? Well, she went and explored it because I was like, go for it. And my wife she let me take the lead on it. Next day, Shannon comes into the room. Hey, Mom and Dad, just want to let you know, I decided I'm not going to be a lifeguard. What? Why? Because you know what you have to do? You actually have to save people. And you know what? You have to be on call, all the time. There's no meeting with your friends. And there's a lot more to it than I thought. Well, I'm glad you explored it. And that was it. So I didn't come across the bad guy. You always tell me what I can and cannot do. And it was a great lesson for my wife and I. And it was great to give our child some space to explore, even if their idea to you seems ridiculous. And that it's not going to maybe pan out the way they have it planned. Let them explore it a little bit and let them figure out their own answer for that. The second quick story I want to share with you is that I speak at Fordham University every year in New York City, and I help welcome all the first year students into the university there at Fordham. And I speak at their Lincoln Center campus and their Rose Hill campus in the Bronx. So I've been doing that for over 15 years. I've been going there. At one of those first year orientations, Christy, a senior orientation leader came up to me and he goes, excuse me, he goes, but you're Ed Gerety. And I go, yeah. He goes, I remember you. You spoke at my orientation. I was a freshman. I go, that's so cool. You remember that? He goes, you actually brought me up on stage. You had me do this whole goal setting thing from I want to I will. I go, do you remember what your goal was? So here he is, a senior in college, and he looks right at me. He goes, absolutely. I go, what was your goal? He said, I will be an Oscar award-winning director by the age of 30 here in New York City. I go, that is so cool. I go, so are you still studying film here at Fordham? And he looked right at me, Christy, and he laughed and he went, no. He goes, I started out in film here. He goes, but the more I got involved with film, I realized it wasn't so much film I was excited about was music. And the more I got involved with music, I realized that's what I wanted to kind of build my life around. And the more curious I got about that, I realized that that's really what I want to do for my life. And so now I have a new goal. I go, what's that? He goes, now I will have my own music production company here in New York City by the age of 30, representing the top hip artists in the world. Wow, good for you. Then I asked him, what are you doing now to get closer to that goal? He goes, well, right now I have an internship with Sony in their international marketing department. Good for you. And so the point of that is that he would never got to here if he hadn't started over here. And we have a tendency sometimes to rush our child. We want to rush our teen and we want it all wrapped up in a bow. I would like that too for my teens. I would like it all to be perfect and a nice little present and their careers all picked out. They have the perfect relationship, the perfect activities. And it's not like that. Life is messy. And it's not just about the goal, and parenting is messy. And so we navigate it, and you try to bring in that reminder of be gentle, to not only just be gentle with your teen, but be gentle with yourself and knowing, you know what? Hey, you're taking the time to listen to a podcast on how to be a better parent. I would give yourself some grace and space as we tell you to give your teen some grace and space. Hey, give yourself some grace and space, because you know what? You're doing a lot better job than what you think you are.
Hallelujah to that, because we are really hard on ourselves. And I think that's what causes us sometimes to be really hard on our teens too, right? Is that we want it to all, as you said, be wrapped up in a neat little bow for them, because it's hard to watch them struggle. It's hard to watch them, suffer or have disappointments. And I know as someone who likes a little bit of control in my life, I have to own that. I want to know what's going to happen. I want to know that it's going to turn out okay. And
Yep.
Parenting doesn't give us that very well, does it?
It does not. It doesn't. Part of that exploration of helping your teen discover where they want to go and what they want to do, so that if you're listening to this, as you listen to this podcast, say, okay, well, what can I do to help my teen get more clarity and direction on where they want to go and what they want to do? Something that we've done in our family for years, and it's something that I've practiced for 30 years now, is every year I make a dream board. And it's an activity that I've shared with our kids, and it's an activity that I share with students and parents around North America. And that the dream board is just that simple activity of if you get a poster board and you find a picture of yourself and you glue it into the center of the poster board, and you go through magazines and you find pictures of your goals and of your dreams and of where you want to go and what you want to achieve. It's not a collage of pretty pictures. It truly is. It's a dream board. It's like a vision board. And so you can invite your child to do that. And they can do it in a number of different ways. It doesn't have to be so formal. They could even form a dream board on their wall in the back of their closet. That's what our daughter did. She put her dream board in the back of her closet so that only she can see it. Our son, I didn't even know if he was making a dream board, except he ended up putting the dream board on the ceiling in his bedroom. So one day I was in his bedroom and sitting on the edge of his bed, I was looking around to see what he surrounds himself with. And I look up in the ceiling and there's his dream board that he sees every night. So a great activity that you could do with your family, as we're wrapping up this year, going to a new year, is wouldn't it be great to have like a dream board party? You could do it with your family, depending on the age of your kids, or you just encourage your kids, if they're teenagers, say, why don't you have 3 of your friends come over and create dream boards going into the new year and have a dream board party. And I've seen it done, and it's really powerful. And that's something that I talk about in my book as well.
So, dream board, and I absolutely love that idea. Like I'll be honest, I've thought about doing it for myself. I've never done it. I think you might have just inspired me to do it. And I've never really thought about having my teen do it. I'd almost love to see what my 6-year-old would do with a dream board.
Yes.
Like, I think that would be pretty fun as well. But that's also this, I think parents listening might be like, well, that's kind of like goal setting. So you talked a little bit about the young man who you'd brought up on stage. He was going to be this Oscar-winning director, et cetera, et cetera. And then because he leaned into curiosity and his own interest, things changed, which, we're encouraging. So I'm curious, like, we make this dream board, but then what if things change? And how does that, it strikes me that there's mistakes that we make when we're setting goals or creating a dream board. What are those mistakes, and are they okay? Are they not okay? Like, how do we avoid them if we should be avoiding them? I know you talk about that in your book.
Yeah, it's such a great question, because when you have someone do a dream board, especially kids, because I think the most frustrating answer you get from your teen as a parent is, so where do you want to go, or what are your goals? And they say, I don't know. Well, that's really frustrating if they keep saying, I don't know. And it's an easy answer for them to give. It's kind of a controlling thing. My experience has been when I've done the dream boards with kids, and teachers have shared this with me as well. When they have their students do the dream boards, what happens is there's certain pictures or words that will appear on the dream boards that they otherwise would never been able to articulate verbally or in any other way. And all of a sudden you'll start to see on that dream board pictures or patterns of certain images that are kind of like, well, look, seems to be a lot of animals on this dream board, or there seems to be a lot of a particular sport, or a particular person who's involved with a particular activity. And you can kind of stare that way. I'll give you an example. I was doing a leadership retreat with a group of seniors, and they did the dream board activity. And then everybody went around. It was like a 2-hour activity. And then everyone got into small groups and shared their dream boards. One of the student leaders there, Christy, was a big time football player, and he was recruited by all the top schools across the country, Alabama, USC, I mean, big schools. Mm-hmm. And so as I looked around at all the dream boards, I looked at his dream board. He had a picture of had a college football team on there, and he had the NFL. One corner of the dream board was all football. And if you looked at it carefully, there was another part that had a picture of the New York City skyline, and then it had like a fancy restaurant picture, like a table. So I'm like, hey, Steve, on the down low, I asked him, Steve, what's up with that little picture here? I see the football and all that, but what's up with that? So he looks to his left, he looks to his right to make sure no one's really listening. He goes, well, listen, he goes, if football doesn't work out, he goes, I'm going to open my own Italian restaurant in New York. And he goes, I'm going to have this awesome Italian restaurant. My grandma makes these great meatballs, and I have the recipe. And he starts getting all excited about it. Well, we were together it was a 2-day retreat, leadership retreat. And so during that 2-day retreat, every time I had a chance to talk with him, I never really talked to Steve about football. I didn't. I talked to him about his grandmother and what that Italian restaurant would look like, and his love for food. And our connection went right, went right to the heart. It went right to the heart because I was able to see something that otherwise he wouldn't really share. And otherwise, I'm like, hey, what do you want to do if football doesn't work out? His answer most likely would have been, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the dream board does. The dream board gives you access. So if you have a 7-year-old or even a 12-year-old that does the dream board, and all of a sudden something appears in that dream board that you haven't really seen them really show an interest to, then you get to feed that fire. So I was doing a parent program, Christy, and I made that comment. And I said, for example, I said, maybe your child has pictures of dolphins all over the dream board. And then you might ask them, hey, what would you want to do? And they say, well, maybe I want to be a dolphin trainer. And I go, then feed that fire. Feed that fire and encourage them. A parent raised their hand in the middle of the program and said, yeah, what if you really don't want your child to be a dolphin trainer?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was a big pause. And then it was that whole idea of like, but if your child is 12, you want to feed the fire. You want to feed that and teach them all the skills of like what it would be to set and achieve a goal and to learn about all they could about dolphins. And maybe they discover halfway along the journey that they don't want to be a dolphin trainer, but instead they want to be a captain of a ship, or they want to be they want to get into professional, whatever it is, something else that's different, but they would have never got that if you hadn't fed the fire for them pursuing that. Yeah. Sometimes we stop feeding the fire, which gives them an opportunity to teach life skills to them. And we miss those opportunities because we're like, oh no, that's not going to be good for you. Why not? Well, it's not realistic. Why not? Why is it not realistic? Why not feed the fire? I'll give you one more example. A parent shared with me, hey, my daughter has this unrealistic goal that she wants to play soccer in the Olympics. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. What she play soccer now? She's on a traveling team, all that. Great. But I just told her it's not realistic. She needs to set realistic goals. Great. What grade is your daughter in? Oh, she's in the 7th grade. She's in the 7th grade. Look, I'm not saying give false belief or anything like that, but she's playing soccer. She loves soccer. She's passionate about the sport. She's in the 7th grade. Let's have her read some biographies and some autobiographies about amazing soccer players that had to overcome unbelievable obstacles in their life to achieve their goal, so that that they can learn, he or she can learn, or they can learn all those life skills towards that goal. Yeah. So we feed the fire. We don't squash it out.
Right. So in doing that and feeding the fire, we're encouraging that curiosity that you've been talking about. We're like giving them an avenue to say, yeah, passion is great, but we're not saying find your passion, because we say that and then half the time we don't really mean it, right? If they decide they want to be a dolphin trainer or an Olympic athlete or whatever, we're like, well, find your passion, but not too much passion because you might not achieve it, right?
I have 7th graders, and not only 7th graders, but I also even sophomores in high school telling me, "Hey, Ed, I really want to be a doctor, but I have something to fall back on." We already have something to fall back on, and we're a sophomore in high school. I'm like, great. I'll for. It's kind of like a student says, "Well, these are the 3 schools I'm going to apply for, and these are my 2 like dream schools, and then these are my safe schools." Safe schools? I'm sorry. I'm not into that languaging. And I think we're teaching our kids, we're teaching them to play it safe. Don't dream too big. Yeah. Don't go out on the tiny branches because you might fall and you might slip and you might get hurt and you might get embarrassed. And I think that's the wrong message. I think we want to teach our kids to be resilient. We want to teach our kids to stand up for their greatness. We want to teach our kids to be curious, to be grateful, because if they're grateful, what else do we want our kids to be? We want our kids to be kind. You can only be kind if you have a grateful heart. I really believe that.
Yes. 100 times. Yes. And we just get in the way sometimes. I think I want to touch on that kindness piece a little bit, because I do hear parents say they want their kids to be kind, but we often put our emphasis on so many other things that we don't in many ways emphasize kindness. So what are some ways that we can teach our children to be kind on a daily basis? Because again, I think especially when they're younger, it's kind of like gratitude. They hear this word all the time, right? It's kind of, they're becoming numb to it a little bit. Be kind, be kind, be kind. And I also think it feels kind of like a little bit squishy to them. Like, what does that really mean to be kind? So how do you talk to kids about this? What do you tell parents to to talk. And obviously I know modeling is a piece of it, but it's got to go beyond that too, right?
The modeling, of course, the modeling is definitely the big piece of it. And the modeling and the kindness piece is kind of it's the languaging piece. I don't know. I know parents can relate to this, because if you've ever talked to your teens' friends and you ask teens, you get into a conversation with them, they start to use certain language, or they make comments about certain social issues, and your ears perk up, because you can literally tell that the languaging that they're using is not from them; it's from their parents. There is a lot of upset, anger, uncertainty, frustration, pain that a lot of people are going through right now, more so than ever. There's just a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot of great things happening too, a lot of exciting things happening, but there's also a lot of there's a lot of uncertainty here.
Yeah.
I'll go back to the modeling piece, just because if you are in the front seat and your kids have their buds in the back, and they're watching a movie, or they're on their phone, I can promise you they are not listening to the phone. The volume is turned down on the phone, and they're listening to you in the front seat. You and your partner talk about what happened at work, especially if you're ripping the person at work apart, especially if you're talking about the neighbors and how maybe the neighbors are going through a really nasty divorce, and you're talking about how they're splitting up and the kids are all upset. And did you hear about Johnny? He's out of work. I'm telling you, they're watching it and they hear it. And it's like, and my wife and I, we've made the same mistake. We're human, but they hear us talking about it. And then all of a sudden, like 2 days later, they'll be like, hey, I heard, what's going on with so-and-so? And like, well, how did you know about so-and-so? Oh, well, I kind of heard you guys mentioning it. They're listening.
Oh, are they ever? I think my kids use every.
And so there's a lot of meanness. There's a lot of meanness happening online and on the internet too, with all the memes and all the just everything. There's just a lot of mean out there. So how do you counter that? Yes, it is modeling. I think the other thing is you can create the shared experience of making it fun. It could be something like, I've done this, where I've been out to dinner with our family and the waitress has been amazing, or the waiter's been amazing, or our server was awesome. And then while we're there, I'm going to be like, hey guys, and they know I'm going to do it. I'll say, can I speak to the manager? And the manager will come over to the table, and our kids are watching this. And the manager will be like, can I help you? Is there anything wrong? And I'll be like, I just want you to know our server tonight was amazing. They did an incredible job. They were attentive. Our son didn't care for the meal he was eating. She came back and fixed all that. But you're modeling that in a way of like, it's a shared experience, because now it's not just you doing the praise and that act of kindness. Yeah. Our whole family is giving it to the praise. And then you give her an extra big tip at the table, and it becomes a real fun shared experience. And then when you see somebody else practicing an art of kindness, you point that out to your child and you say, hey, did you just see that? Or, hey, did you hear this story about what this amazing person just did? You wouldn't believe that. Or, hey, I just heard that somebody helped a family. You shine a light on the stories of kindness that are happening all around us every day. So it's really what you want to focus on, because you can focus on all the sham and the drudgery and the broken dreams that are happening every day. Or I'm not saying you just put on blinders and not know that that's happening, but you can then focus and say, okay, so there is people not being kind today. Well, where can I practice kindness, and where can I show my kids where kindness is being practiced? Yeah. So we don't just model it, we point it out.
I love that. A number of years ago, back during the pandemic, when we were all living very surreal lives, the actor, John Krasinski, I think that's who it was, for a number of weeks, I don't remember, 6 or 8 weeks, he did this weekly, like, the good news, something, I think it was called Good News. And it was like these little YouTube things where he was finding stories, and people were sending him stories about all the good things happening around the world, in the midst of a lot of really terrible stuff, right? People really sick and dying, and et cetera, et cetera. And I have to say, I watched some of those with my daughter, who was not yet a teenager at that point. And she loved it. Like, it just lit her up to see these people being kind and doing amazing things. Like, I feel like it's something that resonates with them when they can see that it is not this big, scary concept, but it's something that they can actually practice and do.
I think the greatest gift that we can learn from our kids is not only are kids incredibly resilient because they are able to bounce back, but kids have an infinite amount of hope and possibility and the ability to truly dream big. And I think we can learn that from our kids, and then we can be inspired by that. and encourage them to say, yeah, you have a choice in life to what you want to focus on. You can focus on, it's that old story. You can focus on what's working, or you can focus on what's not working. It kind of goes back to what we talked about with all the challenges that are going on in the world, and also just with the challenging of being a parent. How do we stay positive? We kind of touched upon it, but I think two real key strategies to stay positive as a parent is, one is you have to make sure that you surround yourself with positive people. And I know it's a message we tell our kids: who are you hanging out with? Make sure you're hanging out with positive people. Well, it is a great message for kids because you are who you hang out with. Well, that message is true for us as we get older too. I believe that as we get older, the company that we keep, when we have the choice to do so, because you can't always choose who you work with or who you're in different projects you're with. But when you have the choice to do so, who you hang out with as an adult plays a huge role in terms of how you feel, your perspective, and your viewpoint of life. So if you really are in a negative space and you really are feeling challenged as a parent, then I would also invite you to pull back and say, you know what, who's in my circle? And in the circle that I'm in, are we positive? Are we supporting each other? Or are we just getting together and are we just moaning and whining and complaining about everything that's wrong with our kids and everything that's wrong with the world? Because if you do that, you're not moving forward. You're actually moving backwards. So it's important to surround yourself with positive people. I think the other thing that's so essential to stay positive as we navigate these teen years is also make sure that we surround ourselves with a positive environment. That's why listening to podcasts like this is so important, because it's part of your environment. You have a choice. You can listen to this podcast, or you can go and listen to a commentary about all the different things that are happening that are really bad in the world. I'm not saying not to be informed. I'm just saying, where do you want to focus all your time on? Yeah. I want to focus on things I can control. There's a lot of things that are going on in the news that I can't control. But you know what I can control? I can control being a better parent. And the only way that I can be a better parent is if I listen to podcasts, if I read books, if I talk to other parents and say, what are you doing? What are strategies and techniques? Have you experienced that? Just like we do anything as a new skill, you have to develop it.
I mean, that is such an important note. And I think a great place to end this fantastic conversation on, which is that idea. And people who know my work or followed me for any period of time have heard me say, I don't think we were meant to parent alone, right? And so having great resources, I hope this podcast is one of them. Your book, Shine Your Light, Navigate Your Way to a Life You Love, is another fantastic resource and can be sort of a support for parents and teens alike. Ed, I'm so grateful to you and the work that you do in the world. This book is phenomenal. I hope that folks will pick it up. We'll make sure that there's links for it in the show notes. But for people who would like to find out more about what you do and where they can find you, what's the best place to connect with Ed Gerety?
Sure. The best way to connect with me, to get information about my live events and my books and my programs and my podcast as well, is edgerety.com.
Perfect. And we'll make sure that link is there for folks as well. Ed, thank you so much for being here. This has been a really fun conversation, and I got a lot out of it, and I know that everybody listening did as well.
Thank you, Christy. And I want to acknowledge you for just your commitment to all the parents out there and your commitment that you have for kids, because kids are our future.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Cheers, everyone. All right, Heartful Parent Podcast listeners, I hope that you loved that conversation as much as I did. I had the great privilege a couple of years ago of being on Ed's podcast, and it was such a thrill to have him on mine, talking about his phenomenal book, Shine Your Light, Navigating a Way to a Life You Love. I hope that folks listening will grab yourselves a copy, an ebook, a copy, wherever you buy your books or at the library, because it's definitely worth a read. I also want to comment that, Ed talked a little bit there at the end about the fact that we all need support and we all need help. And I mentioned that we were never meant to parent alone, which is a huge theme of the work that I do. And I just want to comment that if you are a parent who is in need of some support, there has never been a better time to get it. So if you one-on-one support speaks to you, I do one-on-one coaching. I love working with parents and helping them thrive rather than just survive. And unfortunately, I need to raise my pricing for 2024. But for those folks who commit to coaching and sign up for coaching with me before the end of the year, I am offering to honor all of my current pricing. And also, if one-on-one coaching isn't what you need or it's not in the budget, I also have the Heartful Parent Academy, which is just a phenomenal community of people. You know, Ed talked about surrounding ourselves with positive people, and the Heartful Parent Academy is just that. You can join the Academy now and get $20 off your first month, which gives you a full month of support and phenomenal content that is licensed and certified and has the seal of approval from the Positive Discipline Association. You can get that for only $7. The pricing on the Academy will also be going up just a little bit in the new year. And by joining now, you are locking in your pricing. So for life, like as long as you're a member, you get that pricing. It's $27 a month after your first month, which is like less than $1 a day. And if you think about the phenomenal support you get in there, you get access to me through member calls, you get 13 modules of phenomenal pre-recorded content based in positive discipline and fair play and safety information. You also get access to me through a private Facebook group and monthly hours where you can leave me private messages and I answer you privately. And then there are deep dives where I dig into content specifically, masterclasses with other experts, and so much more. I would love to see you in the Academy. So the code for that is podcast. All you have to do is go to my website, click on the Heartful Parent Academy, click join, and then use the code podcast when you are checking out. That code is good until December 31st. It will get you a month's worth of support for only $7. All right, y'all, have a great week. Don't parent alone. Get that support. I hope you had a great time with today, and I'll see you back next week.